This is Zero Raven.
And today we're going to talk about the Digimon TCG 2020 card game and some deck building tips to help you get started on your Digimon journey. First off, we're going to talk about the ratios. For those of you that don't know, in a sided Digimon deck, you can have anywhere from 0 to 5 Digitama, and you must have exactly 50 cards within your main deck. Posted on the screen, we have ratios that have been tested and proven to be consistent over multiple games. Here, we suggest anywhere from 4 to 5 Digitama, 4 being the Digitama that you want to see the most, and then 5 being the one Digitama that sometimes you want to see. If you only want to see one specific Digitama, then you only play the 4 Digitama. As far as level 3s go, you play a high number of level 3s because all of your plays start from level 3. In Digimon, whenever you Digivolve, you draw 1. So essentially, you're cycling every time you Digivolve, and because of that, you're able to draw into all of your other cards every time you Digivolve. And so, due to that reasoning, we play a high number of level 3, being 12 to 16. For level 4s, we play 10 to 13 for the same reason as why we play so many level 3s, being we want to Digivolve, and we want to consistently get that draw off. As far as level 5s and 6s go, because their costs are inherently higher than say 3 or 4, we play less of those than the others because sometimes they can clog our hands, and it feels really bad not to start our game with the early draw power. Our next topic is inheritable effects.
Alright, so inheritable effects is a very interesting mechanic in Digimon. So if you didn't know, every single Digimon card comes with 2 text boxes. One on the actual card itself, representing its main effect, and then one on the very bottom, which represents its inheritable effect. So how it works is, your Digimon has a main effect that will be active when you're on that Digimon, and it also has an inheritable effect that give benefit to the Digimon it evolved into. So in this here example, you have Tyrannomon, which has jamming, which allow it to attack and not be killed by an opponent Digimon with higher power and security, compared to Kabuterimon, which is essentially a vanilla while you're on him, but he does provide power benefit to the Digimon that you will eventually evolve into. Sometimes you get the best of both worlds, and you get a Digimon like Wergarurumon, which has both effects, one for being on him and one for something that you evolve into. So with that said, let's move on to play versus Digivolve. So as mentioned previously, every Digimon has an inheritable effect and a main effect, but there's also, with the main effect, there's 2 separate types usually. There is an effect that you usually get when you Digivolve, and one that you get when you play the Digimon. So that's not the same thing, and this is a very common misconception that confuses a lot of new players. Well, when a card says on play is when you pay the top memory cost to play from hand, and an evolution is when you pay the bottom memory cost to evolve from a lower level Digimon. So with Seraphimon here, for example, he has a 3-cost evolution, which heal you for 1 and provide the benefit of 1 additional security check when he attacks. And you have also Managermon, which is an 11-cost memory that allow you to heal 2. So they serve 2 different functions, where Managermon is more of a very big tempo play at the expense of giving your opponent a lot of memory. So keep these in mind when you're deck building, because such a powerful effect can potentially swing the game for you and win you the game, but at the same time, when you're giving over so much memory to your opponent, you can also open yourself up to be heavily punished. And then we'll move on to talk about some other options for deck building.
Aside from Digimon within your Digimon deck, you also have options, tamers, and then blockers, which are Digimon. Blockers, in the case of Digimon, basically protect your security from being damaged by opposing attackers. Blockers are in every single color and are a core part of any deck, as they keep you from being reduced to 0 security. Blockers also have a when attacking, you lose 2 memory, except for special exceptions being the black color. Aside from blockers, which you can see from anywhere from 2 to 4 in a Digimon deck, you have options. Options are essentially the spell cards of the Digimon card game. Options have two components to them. They have the main text box, and then they have a security text box, similar to Digimon. The main text box is when you play the spell card or an option card from your hand. The security effect is when you reveal the option card within your security. Keep in mind, option cards can only be played if you have a Digimon or a Tamer of their respective color, and the raising area or breeding area does count for this restriction. Tamers, on the other hand, have no restriction to when you can play them. Tamers are a designated color and they come with certain effects. Most tamers in the game currently are memory tamers. Memory tamers are setting you to 3 memory at the start of your turn if you have 2 or less memory, and they also have an additional effect alongside that. Memory tamers sound like a really good idea because they prevent you from being memory choked or locked to low amounts of memory. However, you have to pay an initial 4 memory investment in order to get this effect off, and it's possible for your opponent to punish you on the 4 memory investment. So keep this in mind when you deck build. Some decks can't afford that 4 memory investment, and so they opt to not run the tamers, whilst other decks need the guaranteed 3 memory at the start of their turn, and so they will opt for anywhere from 2 to 4 memory tamers. Moving on now. Now we're going to talk about color mixing. Color mixing in this game is really cool because it allows a lot of deck expression and creativity. As far as color mixing goes, certain cards such as Omnimon in set 1 will have 2 different colors they can digivolve from, either being red or blue in that specific scenario. But also, there are certain combos and strategies that you can incorporate into your Digimon deck due to color mixing. For example, Rosemon says when an opponent's Digimon attacks a player, if this Digimon is suspended or rested, you can rest one of your opponent's Digimon. This combos really well with Venomiotismon, because Venomiotismon says when you rest an opponent's Digimon, you gain 1 memory. And so, by combining the 2 of them, you create a sort of memory gain soft block in a sense. But then you also have cards like Wizardmon, who are directly enabling color mixing, because Wizardmon is, if you have a yellow Digimon in play, you gain this effect. And now, moving on. Now let's talk about security checks. In Digimon, your security essentially is your life points, and whenever it is attacked, you reveal the security, it being either an option, a tamer, or a Digimon, and depending on what card is revealed, a certain action takes place. If it's an option with a security effect, you would then activate that security effect. If it's a tamer, you can play the tamer for free without paying its cost. If it's a Digimon, then the security Digimon and the attacking Digimon will then proceed to do combat. You, the deck designer, can manipulate whether your security is going to be stronger or weaker on average based on the type of cards you put inside of your deck. By putting cards with security effects or Digimon with high base power inside your deck, you increase the average odds that you will see a strong security. Next.
So as some of you might have noticed, we've touched on the aspect of memory a lot, but that's because memory is a very important part of this game, and we'll have another video later to talk more in depth about how to effectively play with memory. But in short, vanilla tend to be the cheapest in terms of on play costs or on evolve costs for their level. So they are a very effective tool in allowing you to effectively manage memory. And this is important because in Digimon, memory is not only a resource for you to play and use, it is a resource that you give over to your opponent every time you use it. So incorporating vanilla effectively into your deck is very important toward reaching your win condition. And to lead that into level 7s, well, the level 7s, these are the most powerful Digimon in the game, as they should be. They are level 7. They have appropriate cost to for their powerful effects. And typically, these are either the main win condition of the deck, or they provide some sort of synergy or aspect to the deck that it was previously missing. And currently, there's only 2 level 7 in the game. We'll get more in the future. In set 1, we'll get several more. And for example, Omnimon there is a build in Japan that focused exclusively on playing low-cost vanilla to reach Omnimon as fast as possible, and that was proven to be the strongest deck in the Japanese meta for quite a while. And to lead that into our next topic, we talk about win condition. So level 7 is not your only win condition in the game. There are several other way to, build your deck to try and win the game. And for example, the Leopardmon here is a card that incentivizes Rookie Rush, which is go for you to go Y on low level Digimon, try to end the game as quick as possible. And Leopardmon is a card that incentivizes that aggro strategy and benefit you in that way. Or you have something like Kentarosmon, which is more of a stall tempo card, which allow yellow, that is a color that's a little bit on the slower side, to stall out the opponent and catch up in tempo, and maybe use that free turn of negating all of their damage to swing the game back into your favor. Or in some cases, you have cards like Paimon and Puppetmon. Well, these are very powerful play effect, like the Managomon mentioned earlier in the video. Well, Paimon is a very powerful card in that it allows you to play 3 body on the same turn for 1 cost, at the expense of giving over a lot of memory to your opponent. But typically, if he's not answered appropriately, he will be able to win the game for you. And Puppetmon is a card that allows you to punish your opponent for attacking you with a lot of Digimon at one time, because he essentially negate one of their turn by giving them a lot of memory, but not necessarily something that they can use effectively to try and end the game or come back. So as you can see, there's many ways to play the game right now. Whether you want to play aggro, tempo control, combo, there's a lot of things you can do. So try to tailor your deck build to whichever strategy that you find most appealing, and make sure that the card that you're putting in is benefiting whatever your win con you're trying to achieve.
Touching more on achieving your win condition, it is important to understand which cards you can incorporate into your deck to reach that win condition every single game. Decks such as Fast Omnimon incorporate vanilla Digimon due to their low evolution cost, so that you can reach the Omnimon as soon as possible and dominate the game from that position. Other decks such as Ulforce Vidramon or Shine Greymon, which we will see in set 1.5, use Tamers as their primary source of resource, and because of that, you have to use a large amount of Tamers in the deck that you normally wouldn't see in other sorts of decks. Next, let's talk about techs. In the Digimon card game, techs are extremely viable because of how much you cycle through Digivolution, meaning your 1-ofs and 2-ofs you often will see throughout a game. You have lots of techs in the game that are specifically meant to deal with certain situations. For example, Volcandramon is really strong against go wide boards or Rookie Rush, as it completely wipes any Digimon with 4K DP or lower. Cards like Chumon are really effective against decks that want to gain memory on their turn. So cards such as Lilithmon or Vulcan's Hammer that we will see in set 1, Chumon is really strong into denying that. Alongside Tech Digimon, we can also see Tech options, such as Heat Viper. Heat Viper is really good into go wide boards, as it pops one of your own Digimon and instead pops 2 of your opponents. So be aware of the different types of techs you can incorporate in your own deck, or you may even face going forward. Now, moving on. Provided here is a sample list that Zero has come up with, and he's going to talk about his step-by-step, in-depth thoughts as to why he incorporated certain cards into this list.
Okay, so with this list, I just had a very basic aim. So I decided I want to play with Greymon. So with that in mind, I made the rest of the deck with cards that would benefit that strategy. So, for my egg choices, Koromon just happened to be one of the easiest power gain condition. So it was very simple to play 4 of his egg. You can also choose to run 1 egg of something else, but the only other really viable egg option in set 1.0 is the plus 2000 power for Pierce on Baby Dramon, which is not going to be relevant in this particular build, so it's a very obvious choice. And then moving on to level 3, I had Agumon and Yeomon, which are both easy power gainer. Their power gain conditions relatively easy to achieve, and you're most likely gonna see it come up. And the last option is Monodramon. As mentioned earlier, he's a cheap cost vanilla, allow you to get on board faster. And now let's talk about the level 4. So the level 4, I have the 4 blocker because blocker is quite important in the game. Just expect to see 4 blocker in most standard lists. And then you have Dark Tyranno, which is a 1 cost evolution. Again, same purpose, you're trying to get to your high-end Digimon a little bit faster, and you kind of value that over a standard Digimon with like an average inheritable. In this case, I chose a vanilla for that slot, and the last slot is the Greymon from the trial deck. Well, this Greymon is very powerful as it provides a +1 additional crit to the Digimon that evolved from it, and this is a very powerful effect as is inheritable is going to lead both War Greymon and eventually Omnimon to swing for a much more devastating amount of damage. And then in the level 5 slot, we have Groundramon. Again, just vanilla, low cost. This theme is going to come up a lot in deck building for this game, you will find. And then, yeah, as you notice here, I went a little bit different. I have 2 Skull Greymon and 2 Metal Greymon. The Skull Greymon here, what it serves as is... So, as you know, War Greymon is a card that gains 1 additional crit when you evolve into it. So, if you evolve over a Greymon, with a Greymon in your source, and say you have tie out, your War Greymon can be swinging for potentially as high as 4 damage. Well, the counter strategy to this is just to have a blocker out, because War Greymon cannot bypass a blocker. Well, having something like Skull Greymon punish your opponent counter strategy, because they would try to preemptively play a blocker to block the War Greymon. Well, we can just play a Skull Greymon to kill off that blocker and maintain tempo advantage. Whereas the Metal Greymon here is provide a benefit if you do get blocked, because if you do evolve into a War Greymon with this Metal Greymon and you do get blocked, he provide you with free additional memory. And in that same vein, I choose to have 2 Gallantmon, and the Gallantmon here serve as similar purpose to the Skull Greymon, because as your opponent tried to preemptively play card to counter your War Greymon strategy, you can evolve to Gallantmon instead. Gallantmon says that you have a tamer and you evolve it to him, you destroy a Digimon 6,000 power or less. Majority of blocker Digimon in this game is currently 6,000 power or less, with the exception of a couple of the black blocker Digimon. And then finally in the last Digimon slot, we have 3 Omnimon. Omnimon is just good natural scaling over the War Greymon, and it benefit from the same strategy, because once you swing with War Greymon, his value is kind of gone. Going into Omnimon in the next step allow you to benefit from the Greymon inheritable resource to allow Omnimons to swing for 2 damage twice. And overall, he's just a very powerful card to incorporate into your deck. And then with the options, for example, here I have 2 Gravity Crush, and Gravity Crush allow you to gain 2 memory, which allow you to play more cards without passing your turn over, effectively having a stronger turn. And you have 4 Terra Force or Gaia Force, and this is just simply a hard removal to get rid of your problems. And the general rule of thumb in Digimon is hard removal is very powerful, especially one that has security effect. And last but not least, we have 3 tie, red tie. Tie give an additional crit to level 6. Generally going to be effective on level 6 red Digimon with 4 or more source. And he just set your memory to 3. Red is not a particularly fast color, So sometimes being memory locked will slow your deck down a lot. So having the ability to play tight early sometimes will get you to your win condition much faster. So this is a pretty basic list. It's not particularly the best red list possible. That title is reserved for a deck that we will mention in a later video, focusing on the color red. But this should give you a basic idea of the thought process that I kind of went through when I was building this deck.
So adding on to that, some cool things that you guys may notice about this deck is so War Greymon on Digivolve, he gains +1 security until the end of the turn. Because of that, whenever you pass the turn, he loses that security attack. So having the Memory Tamer, tie, or having Gravity Crush to enable +2 memory allows you to not pass the turn with the War Greymon and then get the free damage off. Terraforce, while being a really powerful card, is also 8 memory, so take that into consideration when you drop that onto the board, because you may end up giving your opponent enough memory to just rebuild their stacks. Now, final thoughts. So, in the Digimon card game, there are 6 different colors, and every color plays differently. Identifying which color fits your playstyle is key to having the most fun out of the game. In set 1, we will have a relatively simple card pool, and once set 1.5 comes out, which is the remainder of set 1 through 3 that we had in Japan, the game will become much more complex and will have more interesting playstyles. As we mentioned before, the game has a lot of deck expression and a lot of room for color mixing. So try and experiment, don't just stick to a singular xenophobic monocolor mindset. And lastly, but not least, have fun with the game. The game is brand new. It's coming out in January 2021, or the pre-sale in November. It's really, really fun, and I encourage you and your friends all to try it out. I want to throw a shout out real quick to Orange Swim, who manages the deck builder site online, Digimon Card Dev, and I also wanted to shout out Zaffy, who does the English proxies from the Japanese cards. We hope.
And I also want to thank DG TCG Review for providing very on time and relevant metadata from Japan.
Yeah, so with everything said, we hope you guys found this helpful, and hopefully you look forward to our next piece of content. If there's anything that you'd like to see from us, feel free to drop it in the comments and we'll try and see what we can do. Thank you.
Yeah, thanks for watching, guys.